The blue light filled the room where all the world leaders sat. They had gathered quickly when the strange signal came from space. Now they watched as something appeared in the air above them. It was not human. The creature was tall and thin, with gray-green skin that looked sick. Its eyes were black and empty like dark holes in its face. Primitive species of the third planet, the voice said. It did not sound warm or friendly. It sounded cold like metal scraping on stone. I am Overlord Zethrak of the Calrithian Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You have 72 of your hours to give up. If you fight back, we will kill everyone. The image disappeared. The room was silent. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then everyone started talking at once. High above Earth, on a space station called Liberty, Admiral Jack Morrison hit his hand hard on the table. He was angry. Very angry. He had gray hair and a face that showed he had seen many battles before. 72 hours, he said through his teeth. These aliens don't know who they're messing with. Next to him stood Captain Lisa Matthews. She was younger than Jack, but just as tough. Her fingers moved quickly over the computer screen, reading the information that came in. Sir, their ships are near the moon, she said. We count about 300 ships. They have more weapons than we do. Much more. Jack looked at the screen. He saw the enemy ships floating in space like a dark cloud. Then we need to be smarter than them. Connect me to General Frank Coleman on Earth. Wake up every pilot we have. Every soldier. Every person who can fight. We're not going to die without a fight. Down on Earth, in a science building in Boston, Dr. Helen Price stood in her laboratory. She was looking at a large computer that she had built over many years. It was special. It could do things that normal computers could not do. Her helper, Kevin Ross, ran into the room. His face was white with fear. Did you see it? He asked, breathing hard. Did you see the alien message? Helen nodded slowly. Her mind was already working, thinking fast. Kevin, do you remember that weapon we designed last year? The one the government said was too dangerous. The gravity pulse cannon? Kevin's eyes went wide. Helen, that was just math on paper. We never built it. We would need so much power and time and... We have 72 hours, Helen interrupted. She looked at Kevin with eyes that burned with determination. Call everyone. I don't care where they are or what they're doing. Tell them to come here now. We're going to build that weapon, and we're going to show these aliens why they made a big mistake. Far away in France, in a small, quiet village, a man sat on his porch. His name was Danny Carter. He used to be a Marine, a soldier who fought for his country. Now he was retired. He had fought enough wars. He just wanted peace. His phone rang. The voice on the other end was familiar. It was someone he had not talked to in 5 years. Danny, it's Colonel Patricia Hayes. We need you. Danny sighed. I'm done fighting, Pat. I gave enough years to the military. The Calrithians just told us they're going to kill everyone on Earth if we don't surrender. We're calling back every soldier who ever wore a uniform. Every person who knows how to fight. Danny looked up at the stars. He thought about his life. He thought about all the people on Earth who could not fight. The children. The old people. The families. Send me the address, he said quietly. I'll be there soon. Patricia smiled on the other end of the phone. Good to have you back, Danny. Let's teach these aliens what happens when they pick a fight with Earth. All over the world, things started to change. Countries that had been enemies for hundreds of years suddenly became friends. They shared their weapons, their plans, their secrets. Factories that made cars started making missiles instead. Scientists who worked in different countries started working together. Everyone understood one simple thing. If humans did not work together, they would all die together. In orbit, Jack Morrison watched as ships from different countries came to join his defense fleet. Chinese ships, Russian ships, European ships, African ships, ships from every nation that could fly in space. They formed a line around Earth like guards protecting their home. Admiral, the Joint Command sent orders, Lisa said. We need to stop the aliens at the moon. Give Earth time to prepare defenses on the ground. Jack studied the map on his screen. The alien ships were still waiting beyond the moon. They seemed confident. They thought humans would be easy to defeat. Lisa, put mines in space between here and the moon. Use pattern Delta 7. Lisa looked worried. Sir, that's almost all the mines we have. I know, Jack said. But when they come through, I want them to know they're in a real fight. I want them to bleed. Back in Helen's laboratory, the room had filled with people. Scientists, engineers, programmers, they all worked without sleeping, drinking coffee and energy drinks to stay awake. Numbers and equations filled screens all around the room. "We have a problem," Kevin said. His voice was rough from not sleeping. "This weapon needs 3 times more power than we thought. We would need to take electricity from half the East Coast to fire it just once." Helen did not stop working. Her fingers kept moving on the keyboard. "Then we take it. The Secretary of Energy already said we can. What's a blackout compared to everyone dying?" A young woman named Claire Johnson spoke up from her computer. "Dr. Price, I've been running tests on the computer. If we connect the pulse to Earth's magnetic field, we might need 40% less power." Helen's head turned quickly. "Show me." Claire's hands flew over her keyboard. A picture of Earth's magnetic field appeared on the screen, with lines of force flowing around the planet. "Look, if we fire the weapon when the solar wind is strongest, we can use the natural energy that's already there." Helen smiled for the first time in hours. "Claire, you're brilliant. Change the firing program. We need to be ready in 24 hours. In Colorado, deep inside a mountain, General Frank Coleman watched computer screens that showed troop movements around the world. Every military base was ready for war. Soldiers who had retired, like Danny Carter, were being brought back to fight. Danny himself now stood at a military airport, checking his rifle. Around him, other soldiers put on their combat gear. Some were young and had never fought before. Others were old veterans like him, answering one last call to duty. A young soldier next to him looked nervous. His name was Private Jason Lee. "Do you really think our guns can hurt their spaceships?" he asked. Danny loaded his rifle with a sharp click. "Son, when those ships land and those aliens come out, they'll have to fight us on the ground. Down here, it's not about who has the biggest ship. It's about who wants to survive more. And I promise you, nobody fights harder than humans when everything is on the line." The deadline was coming closer. Every minute brought the moment of truth nearer. On Earth, 7 billion people looked up at the sky and waited. In homes and bunkers and military bases, they held each other. They prayed. They prepared for whatever was coming. Children held their parents tight. Soldiers checked their weapons one more time. Scientists ran their calculations again and again, looking for any mistake. The 72 hours ended. In space, the Calrithian fleet began to move forward. 300 ships started flying toward Earth. Their weapons were charged and ready. They thought this would be easy. They thought humans would run or surrender. They were about to learn how wrong they were. They were about to meet humanity's fury. The alien ships moved through space like a dark wave. On the bridge of the Liberty space station, alarms screamed loud warnings. Red lights flashed everywhere. Lisa Matthews watched her screen with wide eyes. "They're coming," she shouted over the noise. 312 ships, moving fast. They'll reach our defense line in 90 seconds. Jack Morrison held the railing tight. His heart was beating fast, but his voice stayed calm. "All ships, this is Morrison. Don't fire until they hit the minefield. Make every shot count. For Earth," voices came back through the radio. Every captain, every crew member knew this might be their last battle. But they were not afraid anymore. Fear had turned into something else, something harder and stronger. Humans had been pushed into a corner, and cornered animals fought the hardest. The first alien ship hit the mines at full speed. The explosion was silent in the vacuum of space, but it was bright enough to light up the dark side of Earth. Then another ship exploded. And another. In seconds, the space between Earth and the moon became a graveyard of fire and metal. "We hit 27 enemy ships," Lisa reported, her voice excited. "They're breaking their formation!" But the celebration did not last long. The Calrithian fleet learned quickly. Their ships started moving around the remaining mines with perfect precision. Then their weapons began to fire. Green beams of deadly energy shot through space, hitting the human ships. The Chinese destroyer Celestial Dragon took a direct hit. Its hull broke open and air and debris exploded out into space. The Russian carrier Red October fired back with its railguns, sending metal slugs at incredible speed. One round went straight through a Calrithian cruiser, cutting it in half. "All ships, fire everything you have," Jack commanded. "Show them we're not easy prey." The battle became chaos. Human ships were outgunned, but they did not give up. They swarmed around the bigger alien vessels like wolves attacking a bear. Missiles streaked through the darkness. Laser weapons carved glowing lines across metal hulls. Small fighter ships flew between the capital ships, their pilots pulling maneuvers that would kill a normal person. Commander Pete Harris piloted his fighter. called the Vindicator, straight toward the enemy formation. His wingman, Lieutenant Amy Cooper, flew close behind him. "Pete, you have 3 enemy fighters behind you," Amy warned. "I see them. Stay close, Amy. We're going for that big carrier ship." They dove toward a massive Calrithian vessel. Enemy fire filled the space around them with deadly energy. Pete's hands were steady on the controls. Years of training guided him through the impossible gaps between the weapon's fire. "Torpedo away," he shouted, releasing his weapon. The missile flew forward, slipping past the carrier's shields through a small gap that Amy's computers had found. The explosion tore through the middle of the alien ship. More explosions rippled along its length as the ship started to break apart. "That's for the Celestial Dragon," Amy cheered, but their victory was short. A Calrithian fighter appeared behind them with its weapons charged. Pete saw it on his display. He knew he could not turn in time to escape. Then the enemy fighter simply exploded into pieces. Lisa's voice came through on the radio. "Liberty's still fighting, Commander. Now get back here and reload your weapons." On Earth, Helen Price watched the space battle through satellite cameras. Her fingers moved fast over the quantum computer's controls. The gravity pulse cannon was ready, but they needed a clear shot. They needed the alien ships to group together. "Come on," she whispered to herself. "Give me an opening." As if answering her wish, the enemy fleet began to gather together for a big push toward Earth. Dozens of ships formed a spearhead shape, preparing for their final attack. "That's it," Helen said quietly. "Kevin, power to maximum. Claire, sync with the magnetic field. This is our chance." The lights in the facility went dim as power from 3 states redirected to the cannon. The quantum core blazed with energy so strong that reality itself seemed to bend around the weapon. Firing in 3, 2, 1. Now! A pulse of invisible force erupted from the cannon. It was a ripple in space and time itself. It raced upward at the speed of light, crossing the distance to the Calrithian spearhead in just over 1 second. When it hit, 47 alien ships simply crumpled like paper. Their hulls compressed inward. Their shields failed instantly as gravity itself turned against them. Debris scattered in all directions, and the remaining Calrithian fleet pulled back in shock. Jack Morrison watched the tactical display with amazement. "What in the world was that?" "Sir, some kind of gravity weapon fired from Earth. It just destroyed their entire front line." For the first time since the battle started, Jack allowed himself a fierce smile. "Now we have their attention. All ships, attack! Show them that humans don't back down." The human fleet pressed forward with new energy. Every ship that could still fly threw itself at the enemy with desperate courage. The Calrithians had expected fear. They had expected surrender. What they got was fury. But high above the battle on his command ship, Overlord Zethrak watched the displays with cold anger. He had never lost a battle before. His empire had conquered 73 worlds. This should have been easy. His advisor, a smaller Calrithian named Vectos, spoke nervously. "Overlord, we have lost more than half our ships. The humans are fighting much harder than we expected. Perhaps we should retreat?" Zethrak's voice was like ice. "Never. No species has ever made the Calrithian Empire retreat. These primitives just need to be taught a harder lesson." He turned to his weapons officer. "We cannot break through their defenses in space. Prepare the dropships. We will land on their planet and attack their cities directly. If we cannot conquer them from above, we will crush them on the ground." Vectos looked worried. "But Overlord, ground combat against a species defending their homeworld is nothing we have not done before," Zethrak interrupted. "They are primitives with primitive weapons. Our soldiers will sweep them aside like dust. Begin the landing operations. Target their major cities and military bases. Break their command structure, and they will fall apart." On Earth, General Frank Coleman watched his screens as hundreds of alien dropships separated from the main fleet. They began falling toward Earth like meteors, streaking through the atmosphere toward 17 locations around the world. He opened a channel to all ground forces. "This is Coleman. The enemy is coming to us. They want to break us. Show them why Earth has never been conquered. Show them what happens when you invade a human's home. All units, you are free to engage. God be with you all." In downtown Chicago, Danny Carter crouched behind a concrete barrier. His rifle was ready. Around him, 200 soldiers and armed civilians waited in tense silence. The tall buildings that normally filled the sky were dark and empty. Everyone had been evacuated. The streets were quiet except for the defenders, Private Jason Lee checked his ammunition magazine for the 10th time. His hands were shaking slightly. How long? 30 seconds, Danny replied calmly. Remember what I taught you. Aim for the joints in their armor. Short bursts of fire. Control your breathing. And don't freeze up when you see them. Fear is okay. Letting it control you will get you killed. The dropships roared overhead with a sound like thunder. Their engines fired to slow them down as they settled onto Michigan Avenue. Metal ramps came down with hydraulic hisses and the Calrithian soldiers walked out. They were nightmares made real. 8 feet tall, covered in powered armor that gleamed like oil. Their weapons hummed with energy. They moved with confidence like conquerors who had never known defeat. Danny whispered into his radio. Hold your fire! Hold! The aliens moved forward in perfect formation. They scanned for resistance with their sensors. They had conquered 73 worlds before Earth. They expected terror and surrender. What they got was humanity's answer. Now, Danny shouted. The entire street erupted in gunfire. Bullets sparked off the Calrithian armor, but concentrated fire found the weak points between the plates. Aliens staggered as rounds hit joints and helmet visors. Rocket-propelled grenades streaked from rooftops, slamming into dropships. Homemade explosives detonated beneath advancing squads, throwing aliens through the air. The Calrithians fired back. Their energy weapons cut through concrete and steel like butter. A blast turned the barrier next to Danny into molten slag. Jason Lee screamed as a near miss burned his shoulder badly. Stay down, Danny ordered. He dragged the young soldier behind better cover. Then he leaned around the corner and fired carefully. His shots were precise despite all the chaos. One alien fell, then another, but more kept coming from the dropships. For every alien they killed, 2 more appeared. The human line began to break under the pressure. Then a deep roar filled the air. A tank came around the corner, its main gun turning toward the aliens. The cannon fired with a massive boom. The round punched through one Calrithian's chest armor and continued through 2 more aliens behind it. Cavalry's here, boys, the tank commander shouted. All infantry fall back to the second line. We'll cover you. Danny grabbed Jason and ran, half carrying the wounded soldier. Behind them, the tank fired again and again, buying them precious seconds. The quantum computer executed its program in a microsecond. In that impossibly brief moment between the cannons firing and the beams reaching Earth, reality itself flexed and bent. The planet's magnetic field, manipulated with quantum precision, became a mirror. The energy beams struck the magnetosphere and bounced back toward their source. The transformation happened so fast that human eyes could not follow it. One moment death was falling from the sky. The next moment it was racing back up toward the Calrithian fleet, magnified by the feedback loop that Helen had created. The alien fleet had no time to react, no time to raise shields or take evasive action. Their own weapons, multiplied in power by Earth's magnetic field, struck them with devastating force. Ships that had survived humanity's desperate assault simply disintegrated in blinding flashes of light. The bombardment cannons overloaded instantly and exploded, tearing through the remaining vessels like a chain reaction of destruction. On the bridge of his command ship, Overlord Zethrak watched in frozen horror as the energy beams reversed course. His mind, trained for conquest and war, could not comprehend what was happening. It was impossible. Primitives could not do this. Shields, he screamed. Full power to shields. But it was too late. The reflected beam struck his ship with the force of a collapsing star. Vectos had time for one brief scream before the bridge exploded around them. The walls turned to plasma. The floor became fire. In his final moment, Overlord Zethrak understood. These were not primitives. These were humans. And humans did not surrender. They adapted. They learned. They turned your own strength against you. Then his command ship exploded, taking him and the lesson he had learned too late into oblivion. In orbit around Earth, Jack Morrison and his crew watched in stunned, disbelieving silence as the entire Calrithian fleet tore itself apart. Ship after ship exploded in cascading fireballs. The dark cloud that had threatened humanity was being consumed by light. Lisa let out a cheer that started quietly, and then grew louder. Soon the entire Bridge of the Liberty was shouting and crying and hugging each other. The same celebration erupted on every surviving human ship. They did it, Lisa shouted, tears streaming down her face. Those magnificent people on the ground actually did it. Jack allowed himself a weary smile. He felt like he had aged 10 years in the past few hours. Signal all ships. Pursue any survivors, no mercy. They came here to exterminate us completely. We're going to show them what extinction really looks like. The human fleet, battered and bloodied but unbroken, surged forward. Fighters that could barely fly hunted down fleeing Calrithian ships. Capital ships that were held together by emergency repairs fired their last missiles. Every human who could pull a trigger or press a firing button did so with savage determination. This was not just about survival anymore. This was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. You do not threaten Earth. You do not declare war on humanity. Because if you do, you will face consequences beyond imagination. On Earth, in her laboratory, Helen Price slumped in her chair as the reality of what they had done finally hit her. They had won. Against all odds, against impossible chances, they had actually won. Her hands were still shaking from adrenaline. Emergency crews rushed into the laboratory to check the quantum core. It was smoking and sparking, pushed far beyond its designed limits. But it had held together just long enough. Kevin put a hand on Helen's shoulder, his own voice thick with emotion. You saved the world, Helen. You actually saved the whole world. She shook her head slowly. No, we all did it. Every soldier who held the line while we worked. Every pilot who flew into certain death without hesitation. Every engineer who worked 48 hours straight. That's what saved us. Not one person's genius. Not advanced technology. Just the simple, stubborn human refusal to give up. Claire pulled up news feeds from around the world on the screens. Cities that had been battlefields were erupting in celebration. Strangers hugged in the streets. Flags flew from every building that still stood. People danced and cried and laughed. Humanity had been divided by so many things for so long. Different countries, different beliefs, different languages and cultures. But in their darkest hour, they had become one species with one goal: survive. And they had done it. In Chicago, Danny Carter watched alien dropships explode in the sky as their motherships died above. The Calrithian soldiers on the ground, suddenly cut off and leaderless, began to retreat in disorder. Some tried to surrender. Others fought to the bitter end. Danny raised his rifle and keyed his radio one final time. His voice was rough but determined. All units, the fleet is broken. These invaders wanted a war. They wanted to conquer Earth. Let's show them how wars end when you lose. The human forces surged forward with a roar that seemed to shake the very buildings. Soldiers who had been on the defensive for hours suddenly became the attackers. The Calrithians, who had never known defeat in 73 worlds, learned what it meant to face an enemy fighting for their home, their families, their very right to exist. The battle was brutal and short. The aliens fought well, but they were surrounded and outnumbered. Their technology was impressive, but it could not overcome the sheer determination of humans defending their planet. It took 3 more hours to hunt down the last of the landing forces around the world. Some Calrithians surrendered when they realized all was lost. Others fought until they fell. By sunset, it was over. Danny sat on the steps of a ruined building, his rifle across his knees. The battle was over, but adrenaline still pumped through his veins. He watched the sun set over Chicago, painting the smoke-filled sky in shades of orange and red. Jason Lee limped over and sat beside him. The young soldier's shoulder was bandaged and his uniform was torn and bloody, but he was alive. He had survived his first real battle. We won, Jason said quietly, as if saying it out loud would make it more real. Danny nodded slowly, looking out at the destroyed street. Buildings had collapsed. Fire still burned in places. Bodies of both humans and aliens lay where they had fallen. We did, Danny replied. But son, I want you to remember this day. Remember what it cost. Remember the ships that burned in space. Remember the soldiers who didn't make it home to their families. We won because we had no choice. Because surrender was never an option. That's what it means to be human. Jason was quiet for a long moment, processing everything he had seen and done. Do you think they'll come back? The Calrithians or other aliens? Danny thought about the question carefully. Maybe. The galaxy is a big place. There might be other species out there who think we're easy targets. But I'll tell you what I know for certain. Anyone who attacks Earth after today is going to hear about what happened here. They're going to hear how we destroyed an empire that had conquered 73 worlds. And they're going to think twice. Around the world, similar conversations were happening. Soldiers shared quiet moments with their comrades. Families reunited and held each other tight. Scientists and engineers celebrated their impossible victory. In orbit, repair crews worked on damaged ships while others chased down the last fleeing Calrithian vessels. Not a single alien ship was allowed to escape. Humanity wanted no witnesses to carry tales back to whatever remained of the Calrithian Empire. Let them wonder. Let them send investigation ships to find nothing but wreckage. In the United Nations building, world leaders gathered again. This time there was no panic, no fear, just exhausted relief and a new sense of unity. They had fought as one species and won as one species. The Secretary General stood before the Assembly. Today we proved something to ourselves and to the universe. We proved that humanity will not be conquered, will not be enslaved, will not go quietly into extinction. We stood together and we survived. There was applause, but it was subdued. Everyone was too tired for grand celebrations. They had won, yes. But the cost had been high. Thousands of soldiers dead, dozens of cities damaged, entire space stations destroyed, but they had survived. Earth remained. Humanity endured. In her laboratory, Helen looked at the smoking quantum computer and made a decision. Kevin, Claire, start working on improved versions. Better power systems, faster calculations, more range. Kevin looked confused. Why? The threat is over. Helen shook her head. This threat is over. But Jason asked Danny a good question earlier. What if someone else comes? We can't rely on luck and desperate gambles every time. We need to be ready. We need to be strong. Today we survived. Tomorrow we need to make sure we thrive. All around the world that same thought was occurring to people. Scientists began planning better weapons. Military leaders analyzed the battle to find ways to improve. Engineers designed new ships with lessons learned from combat. Humanity had survived, but they would not forget. They would not become complacent. The galaxy had declared war on Earth and lost. Now Earth would make sure it never happened again. All around the world, similar battles raged in the streets. In Tokyo, Japanese soldiers used the subway tunnels to attack the aliens from below. They would strike fast and then disappear before the Calrithians could respond. The aliens grew frustrated trying to chase an enemy they could not catch. In London, British Special Forces teams struck from the shadows. They used hit-and-run tactics, attacking weak points and then vanishing into the maze of old buildings. Every street corner became a trap. Every alley held danger. The Calrithians had superior technology, but the humans knew their own cities better than anyone. In São Paulo, Brazilian forces turned the dense favelas into a nightmare for the invaders. The narrow passages and tight spaces made the alien size and heavy armor a disadvantage. Human soldiers moved through the favelas like ghosts, striking where the enemy was weakest. The Calrithians had expected resistance, but not like this. Not this level of ferocity. Not this absolute refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Every meter of ground they took cost them dearly in blood and soldiers. Back in Chicago, Danny and his unit had fallen back to a fortified position inside an old office building. Jason Lee sat against a wall, a medic wrapping his burned shoulder. The young soldier's face was pale, but his eyes were clear. "We're really fighting aliens," Jason said, as if he still could not believe it, like in the movies. Danny reloaded his rifle and checked the street below through a broken window. "Nothing like the movies, son. In movies, everything works out clean. In real life, war is messy and random and unfair. But you did good out there. You didn't freeze when it mattered." The radio crackled. "All units, this is General Coleman. The enemy is suffering heavy casualties in all theaters. They expected us to break and run. Instead, we're making them pay for every step. Hold your positions. Reinforcements are coming." Danny smiled grimly. "You hear that? We're hurting them. Keep it up." In orbit, Jack Morrison's fleet continued to hammer what remained of the main Calrithian forces. The Liberty had taken serious damage. Fires burned in 3 sections of the station. Half the crew was wounded or dead, but her guns never stopped firing. "Admiral, we've lost contact with 7 more ships," Lisa reported. Her face was covered in soot and there was a cut above her eye. "The Defiance went down 10 minutes ago. We're at 60% combat effectiveness." Jack's jaw was set hard. "What about the enemy?" "Their fleet is at 45% strength. We've bloodied them badly, sir, but they're still dangerous. Then we keep fighting. Divert all power to weapons. If we're going down, we're taking as many of these invaders with us as we can." But even as he spoke, something changed. The Calrithian fleet began to pull back, retreating to a higher orbit away from the human ships. "Sir, they're withdrawing," Lisa said in disbelief. Jack frowned, watching the tactical display carefully. No, they're not running. They're regrouping. They underestimated us once. They won't make that mistake again. He was right. High above Earth, Overlord Zethrak watched holographic displays in his damaged command ship. Sparks fell from broken ceiling panels. The lights flickered. His advisor Vectos spoke nervously. Overlord, our losses are at 53%. Ground forces are reporting unexpected resistance. The humans fight with a ferocity we have never encountered. Perhaps we should consider withdrawing to regroup and withdraw? Zethrak's voice was deadly cold. Never. No species has ever made the Calrithian Empire retreat. These primitives simply need to understand the price of defiance. He turned to his weapons officer with burning anger in his black eyes. Prepare the planetary bombardment cannons. We will burn their cities to ash from orbit. We will boil their oceans. When we are done, this planet will be lifeless rock. Then we will see how fierce they are. Vectos went pale. But Overlord, the resources we came to claim mean nothing compared to our honor. Zethrak interrupted sharply. If we cannot conquer them, we will annihilate them completely. No one defies the Calrithian Empire and lives. Charge all bombardment weapons to maximum power. The weapons were massive cannons built into the largest ships. Each one could crack a continent. Together they could destroy all life on a planet. The Calrithians had used them before on worlds that refused to surrender. They were weapons of last resort, meant to teach the galaxy that resistance was futile. On Earth, deep in her laboratory, Helen Price's computer detected the energy buildup in the Calrithian fleet. Alarms started blaring. Her blood ran cold as she understood what the readings meant. They're going to destroy the planet, she whispered. Kevin, how long until we can fire the gravity cannon again? Kevin looked up from his console. His face was white with fear. 6 hours at minimum. The quantum core is dangerously overheated. If we fire it now, it will explode and destroy half of Massachusetts. Helen closed her eyes. They had hurt the enemy. They had made them bleed. They had shown the Calrithians that humans were not weak. But it was not going to be enough, or was it? An idea began to form in her mind. A crazy, desperate idea that might be humanity's only chance. Claire, Helen said suddenly, her voice cutting through the panic in the room. You said we could sync with Earth's magnetic field to reduce power requirements. What if we didn't use our cannon at all? What if we used theirs? The young programmer looked confused. I don't understand what you mean. Helen's fingers flew across the holographic interface, bringing up models and equations. Their bombardment cannons are about to dump massive amounts of energy toward Earth. Energy that has to travel through space, through Earth's magnetosphere. If we can create a quantum feedback loop at the exact moment they fire. Kevin's eyes went wide with understanding. We could redirect their own weapons back at them. Helen, that's completely insane. We would need to calculate the exact moment they fire, the precise frequency of their energy signature, account for gravitational distortion, and we have the most powerful quantum computer ever built sitting right here, Helen interrupted. Her voice filled with fierce determination. Claire, I need you to hack into their firing system. Get me their exact firing sequence. Kevin, set up the feedback protocols in our system. We have one shot at this, one chance to save everyone. Claire's face showed fear but also determination. Their security will be incredibly complex. You cracked the Pentagon's firewall when you were 16 just to prove you could, Helen said. This is no different, except this time 7 billion lives depend on it. Claire nodded and turned to her computer, her fingers already starting to fly across the keyboard. Across the planet, humanity held its breath without knowing why. Some instinct, some deep understanding told everyone that the moment of final judgment was coming. In Chicago, Danny Carter and his unit watched the sky, knowing death was approaching but unable to stop it. In orbit, Jack Morrison ordered his battered fleet to form one last defensive line between Earth and the bombardment cannons. He knew it would not be enough. The cannons would fire straight through his ships and continue to Earth, but he would not abandon his post. If these were his last moments, he would spend them defending his home. Then a voice crackled across every military channel on Earth and in space. It was Helen's voice, and it carried absolute conviction. This is Dr. Helen Price at MIT. To all military forces, all civilians, everyone who can hear this, I need you to trust me. When those bombardment cannons fire, it's going to look like the end of the world. But if my calculations are correct, if my team has done everything right, it's going to be their end instead. Hold the line. Just hold the line for 30 more seconds. Give me 30 seconds. Danny did not know who this woman was, but her voice carried such certainty, such unwavering confidence that he believed her. He keyed his radio. You heard the lady? 30 seconds. We've come this far. We can hold for 30 more seconds. Around the world, millions of soldiers and civilians heard the same message. They did not understand what was about to happen, but they trusted. They hoped. They held their positions and waited. In space, Claire's fingers danced across her keyboard at incredible speed. The Calrithian computer systems were complex, but patterns were patterns. Codes were codes, and humans had been breaking codes and hacking systems since the first computers were invented. I'm in, she gasped, sweat running down her face. Helen, they're firing in 10 seconds. 9, 8. Helen watched streams of data cascade across her displays. The quantum computer was running calculations that would have taken normal computers years to complete. The margin of error was microscopic. If she was off by even 1 nanosecond, Earth would burn. Everyone would die. 7, 6, 5. Kevin gripped the edge of his console so hard his knuckles turned white. Helen, the power fluctuations are off the scale. The system is barely holding together. If this doesn't work, it will work, Helen said, though her hands trembled as she entered the final commands. 4, 3. It has to work. On the Calrithian command ship, Overlord Zethrak watched his bombardment cannons reach full charge. After this, the primitive humans would be extinct. His honor would be restored. The Empire's reputation would remain intact. Fire, he commanded coldly. The bombardment cannons unleashed their terrible power, beams of concentrated energy, each one capable of boiling entire oceans lanced down toward Earth. 6 months passed. 6 months of rebuilding, of healing, of learning from what had happened. The destroyed cities were being reconstructed, stronger than before. The lost ships were being replaced with better designs. The fallen soldiers were honored as heroes who had saved their species. But the biggest change was not in buildings or technology. It was in how humanity saw itself. For the first time in recorded history, the nations of Earth truly worked together. The old divisions seemed petty now. What did borders matter when you had fought side by side against extinction? Then one day, new ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. They were not Calrithian ships. These were different designs from multiple species, and they broadcast messages of peace. Representatives from something called the Galactic Council had come to Earth. They wanted to meet with humanity's leaders. This time there would be no threats, no ultimatums. This would be a meeting of equals. The meeting took place on a newly constructed orbital station. Humanity had named it Hope. It seemed fitting. The station was built from the wreckage of both human and Calrithian ships, a monument to both the battle and the victory. World leaders gathered in the main conference chamber. Admiral Jack Morrison was there, promoted to fleet commander for his actions during the battle. Dr. Helen Price attended as Earth's chief science advisor. General Frank Coleman represented the ground forces. Danny Carter was there too, standing for all the soldiers who had fought and bled. The Galactic Council's ambassador arrived in a form that surprised everyone. It was not a physical being, but pure energy contained in a shimmering field. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. The translator identified it as Luminar, an ancient being from a species that had evolved beyond physical form. Greetings, people of Earth. Luminar's voice resonated through the chamber. We are the Galactic Council, representatives of 400 member species across this region of space. We have observed your recent conflict with the Calrithian Empire. There was a pause, as if the being was choosing its words carefully. In all our records spanning 50,000 of your years, no species at your level of development has ever defeated the Calrithians. Most civilizations surrender immediately when the Empire makes its demands. Those few who choose to fight are typically crushed within days. Your world not only survived, but completely destroyed their invasion fleet. Jack Morrison stood tall despite the scars he carried on his face and body. They made a mistake. They thought we were weak because we were young. They thought our lack of advanced technology made us helpless. They forgot that sometimes the young are the most dangerous because they have everything to lose and nothing holding them back. Luminar's energy form pulsed with what might have been respect. Indeed, your species displayed remarkable qualities. Adaptability under pressure, unity in crisis, the ability to turn your enemy's strength against them. These are rare traits, especially in younger civilizations. Another council member spoke, a tall, crystalline being that reflected light in rainbow patterns. The Galactic Council wishes to extend an invitation. We would like Earth to join us as a member species. You would have access to advanced technology, trade with hundreds of worlds, and protection under council law. Helen Price stepped forward. Her hair was still singed at the ends from an explosion 6 months ago, and she wore it as a badge of honor. We appreciate the offer, and we're willing to consider it seriously. But first, you need to understand something about humanity. She looked around at her fellow humans, then back at the alien representatives. We didn't fight the Calrithians because we wanted glory or territory. We didn't fight because we were conquerors looking to expand. We fought because they threatened to exterminate us. They gave us no choice but to fight back with everything we had. Her voice grew stronger, more intense. We'll join your council. We'll work with you and share with you and learn from you. But you need to know this truth about humans. We don't start fights. We don't want war. But if anyone threatens Earth, if anyone threatens our people or our home, they will learn the same lesson the Calrithians learned. Danny Carter spoke up, his voice rough but clear. We might not have the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons, but we have something that apparently is rare in your galaxy. We have the absolute refusal to surrender. The complete unwillingness to give up even when all hope seems lost. Push us into a corner, and you'll find out just how dangerous a cornered human can be. The council members conferred among themselves in languages that the translators struggled to interpret. Finally, Luminar spoke again. We understand your position. In truth, it is one of the reasons we wish to extend membership. The Calrithian Empire was a threat to many worlds. They were powerful and they were expanding. You have done what we could not. You have stopped them. A smaller alien covered in fur and with multiple arms added. The few surviving Calrithian ships have fled to their home systems. They are broken, their fleet destroyed, their reputation shattered. It will take them centuries to rebuild if they ever do. And every species in the galaxy now knows what happened here. Earth has become known by a new name among the stars. What name? Jack asked. The world that does not surrender, the alien replied. The world that broke the Calrithian Empire. The world of humanity. Jason Lee, who had been allowed to attend as a representative of the young soldiers who fought, spoke up nervously. Does this mean there will be more wars? More invasions? Luminar's form pulsed thoughtfully. Perhaps. The galaxy is vast and contains many species with different goals and values. Conflicts will arise, but I can tell you this with certainty. After what happened here, after the complete destruction of a Calrithian fleet, most species will think very carefully before threatening Earth. You have earned a reputation that will protect you far better than any weapon. The council members and human leaders talked for many hours. They discussed trade agreements and technology sharing. They talked about cultural exchanges and scientific cooperation. Slowly, carefully, the terms of Earth's membership in the Galactic Council were worked out. But underlying every discussion was an unspoken understanding. Earth was not joining as a weak species begging for protection. They were joining as equals who had proven themselves in the hardest way possible. As the meeting concluded and the alien representatives prepared to return to their ships, Helen approached Luminar. Can I ask you something? Of course, Dr. Price. In your 50,000 years of records, have you seen other species like us? Other young civilizations that refuse to surrender? Luminar was quiet for a long moment. A few, very few. Most species either evolve past the need for such fierce resistance, or they are conquered before they can develop it. Your combination of advanced technology, unity under pressure, and absolute determination is extremely rare. Is that a good thing, or a bad thing? That depends on what you do with it, Luminar replied. Used wisely, such traits can make humanity a great force for good in the galaxy. Used poorly, you could become as great a threat as the Calrithians were. We hope you will choose wisely. Helen nodded slowly. We'll try. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. But I think most humans genuinely want peace. We just need others to respect that desire. Then we will respect it, Luminar assured her. And we will make sure others do as well. The Galactic Council's ships departed, leaving humanity to process everything that had happened. Earth was no longer alone in the universe. No longer isolated. They were part of something bigger now, part of a galactic community. But they had joined on their own terms as equals, not as conquered subjects. Months turned into years. Earth technology advanced rapidly with access to galactic knowledge. Human ships, now equipped with better engines and weapons, patrolled the solar system. The defense station Liberty was rebuilt and expanded. New orbital platforms circled Earth like protective guardians. But despite all the changes, despite joining the galactic community, humans never forgot the lesson of the Calrithian invasion. They never became complacent. Every generation was taught about the day aliens declared war on Earth, about how humanity came together and fought back, about the price of survival. Danny Carter, now retired for the second time, often gave talks at military academies. His words were always the same, always simple, always true. "Remember this," he would say to the young recruits who hung on his every word. "We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the smartest. We're not the most advanced. But we have something that many others lack. When everything is on the line, when our backs are against the wall, when giving up would be easier than continuing, we fight, we adapt, we survive." He would pause, looking at each young face. Anyone can be brave when things are easy. Anyone can be strong when they're winning. True strength, true courage is fighting on when you have every reason to quit. That's what makes us human. That's what saved Earth. And that's what will keep Earth safe as long as we remember it. Jason Lee, now a captain himself, taught the same lessons to his own soldiers. The gravity cannon that Helen had built was now part of Earth's permanent defenses, improved and more powerful. Claire had become one of Earth's top security experts, making sure no alien could hack human systems the way she had hacked theirs.